You're listening to the Bombad Generals.
General? Oh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Bombad Generals. So it's me, Matt, here with Seth. Hello, Seth.
Hello there.
Hello there. We have the start of a new series. I feel like we kind of have like a few bits that we go back to here and there.
Sure.
So it's not like it'll be exclusively this for the next little while, but wanted to dive into objective cards, deployments, conditions, kind of taking looks at when do you want to include them, when do you not want to include them, but also, hey, I've been forced, quote unquote, forced to play this objective. How do I approach it, even though it's not optimal for my list? Or, same with conditions and deployments, but to a lesser extent, obviously, objectives are the big thing there. So today we're looking at what I like this lineup because this is what I do for a teaching game. I do breakthrough, battle lines, clear conditions. Because easy setup with battle lines, easy to explain. Objective with breakthrough and gets people moving, and then clear conditions. Obviously, nothing much happening there. So, do you want to get us started, Mr. Seth? Talking about breakthrough. I think this will be the big meaty stuff.
Yeah, we'll probably spend a lot. I mean, throughout this series, I think we're going to be doing a lot more, objective.
Yeah.
Because objective is win condition. All right, so breakthrough. Let me just read off the card. Victory. Mm-hmm. At the end of the game, each player gains one victory token for each of their unit leaders within an enemy deployment zone. That's it. Now, just to clarify, your whole miniature has to be within the deployment zone. It's not just like one little sliver of your miniature. The whole model, the whole base has to be fully within, and no matter what it is. And so that is the objective. I think when I approach this, or let's talk about what list. When do you want to bring this into your? So
deck? before you even set foot in the event, you're building your list. Do I put this in? Because essentially you have to choose half the objectives to go in your list. When does this make the cut versus when doesn't it for you? Because I know this is actually one in your Yoda Chewie list that kind of
it's
lots
not.
of people put in there, but you do not. Yeah,
I do not. Yeah,
exactly. So it's an interesting. I think you're a good person to speak to this.
Yes. So I guess, okay, I'll tell you when I do it and then when I don't. Okay, so when I do bring it is when I have a lot of mobile units. Normally units that like Barks are a good one. That's why a lot of people bring it for Yoda Barks. OG Blizzard Force, or even Blizzard Force now brings it because they have 4 bikes. Because they just really, they have a lot of mobility. I saw a lot of stuff with people bring it with R2 because R2 is already wants to go to the deployment zone. So that's already 2 victory points right there with R2. Pretty Mandalorians, speed 3 units, kind of. But mainly units that have a lot of mobility built into them usually is what you want to bring them. Sometimes I've seen stuff with Wookiees because Wookiees are already wmoving a lot. It's totally up to you and kind of how the strategy you want to play. But when I don't bring it is, I know for me, whenever I play my bikes and my barks, I always we talk about trading units a lot. I always trade my barks, so my barks are gonna die. Normally, right? Probably 8 games out of 10, all my barks will probably die. So that's where I'm not bringing it because I'm not relying on my barks to score. And that's why I don't bring it in my Yoda Chewie when I have mobility. But that's just
well, answer Yoda Chewie is only a 9-act list, right? So how much does that factor into it? Because activations is a big thing in breakthrough. Because essentially, because there are games where you fight, there are games where you clash, and maybe you just sneak a couple people like speeders because you can turn 6, just triple move them, maybe get them in there, right? But then there are games where a toilet bowl can happen and one guy goes one way, the other guy goes the opposite way. You just kind of spiral around each other, and if you show up to the table and your opponent has 10 activations, they're going to win that game if you just toilet bowl, which means you have the impetus. You have to take the fight to them, which is generally not where you want to be, being the one to force engagement.
Which is, we did see a toilet bowl match, the world's finale this past year. Correct? Yeah,
I can't. That's too long ago, man.
Oh, okay.
How could I be expected to remember that?
But it was a breakthrough game where like it was a toilet bowl that they played. So, anyways,
yeah, I mean it's a consideration, right? And just because you're a low act list doesn't mean you can't take breakthrough, but you have to know what your win condition is there. And yes, speeder bikes are usually a great option if they survive, but that is the big thing. As you know, they don't necessarily survive
all the time. I've also seen stuff like don't bringing like big base units, because like that's a big base you have to get within like deployment zone. Like an
AAT or a Saber tank is going to have a tough time fitting in a lot of deployment zones.
Yeah, and the big thing that I also think about is like my activation efficiency. So it's like whenever you're playing breakthrough, like you're always wanting to take a move action, or depending. We'll talk about strategy later, but like is my list still like, do I want to take that many move actions? And I'm like, no, I don't. Okay, don't bring breakthrough.
Yeah, I play a lot of gun lines, so I want to be moving backwards, not necessarily forwards. I want to move up, shoot, cycle backwards. I don't want to be go forward. But I mean, honestly, when I was playing Dark Troopers, it's not like a traditional list, and it has low scoring activations, but we'll get into a bit later, but like that could beat Blizzard on breakthrough, because you're taking the fight to them and you're just moving forward the whole time, and you don't feel bad about that. So yeah, you mentioned aggro lists like melee. If you're playing high act, what's it? I was gonna say Wookiees, but the little Wookiees, Ewoks, you know.
Yeah.
If you're playing high act Ewok lists, you're trying to get there anyways. If you pin them back close to their deployment zone, you're only like a couple moves out of theirs, and they are many moves away from yours when you're caught in that melee.
Yes. And I can also see, like, I know we have Geonosians released, but I think Geonosians are going to be really good at this game, at this objective, because they get those free move actions, and they don't like get the negative because they're not carrying anything.
There's no reason for them not to be using that free action every turn, because you can move, aim, shoot if you want to. Yeah. I think too, the other thing is it's an objective where you really can math it out in terms of action economy. If you think about, we're going to talk about the breakthrough objective. You start range 4 beyond each other's deployment zones, which is just over 4 speed 2 moves. So if you have a unit that is a regular trooper, move speed 2, you're going to have to move them straight across at least 5 times in that game. And throughout the game, you can be thinking, okay, there's 3 turns left and I'm range, I need 3 more moves. So I need to make sure I move 1 a turn or do a double move in there. And that's where suppression and stuff comes in too. So it's a very action-focused game, because you have to get somewhere. You have to math out and know
every action counts on breakthrough. Not that every action doesn't count on other things, but I think you really have to map out how you're handling your actions in your activations each time.
For sure. If you get distracted and say, I'll sit here and aim shoot for a couple turns or go this direction to do whatever, you could take yourself out of potential scoring.
Sorry, he's playing with my this is my son. He's playing with the Clones comm technician, because who cares about that? I never bring
he's the only person who plays with the Clones comm technician currently.
Yes. Yes, sorry.
That goes back to our last episode about I did mention comms techs as a potential thing to watch out for if they get a little bit cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the big things I wanted to look at with this series is, let's say because of speeders, a lot of lists that take breakthrough are also going to take something like bombing run, which is very rough if you're playing a gun line, or even like an aggro list might want to play breakthrough but might not want to play bombing run. So you'll get in situations about a third of the time where it's a lesser of two evils choice to go with breakthrough, and you're going to be, that's where kind of you're quote unquote forced to play breakthrough because the alternative is playing bombing run. So, or, you know, maybe there's other situations, maybe it's breakthrough or hostage against Yoda, and you really don't want to play hostage against Yoda with your list. So, I think the big thing with gun lines into breakthrough, and honestly, even in mirrored breakthrough games, this goes with speeders. You want to be in the middle of the board. You know, these lists that run breakthrough tend to run the long objectives, where you're on the long edge of the table to make the table wide. Because if the table's constricted, to get to the other side, you have to go through a choke point. And that can be a death trap. So you widen up the table, that way you can hit and run and, you know, bounce out if you have to. If you deploy your units in the middle of the table, then your opponent can either line up across from you, and then you just march into each other and pew 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 and see who comes out on top, and hopefully that's you because you have a gun line. Or they go into a side, in which case you can kind of reduce it to a 3x3 and kind of close the net on them. What happened to me last year at LVO, because I had not played a lot of speeder lists, but I was doing the Blizzard Force at LVO, and eventually my third mirror match of the weekend, I was doing a breakthrough mirror on battle lines, I actually think it was, and I did the wrong thing. I went into a corner, and my opponent did the right thing, put it in the middle. And even that's a matchup where both players have speeders. But if you're in the middle, you can hit the opponent on the side with your speeder, and then you have the whole rest of the board to bounce out to. Versus if you're in the corner, you can hit them, you can flank, hit them with the speeder, but you have nowhere else to escape to, and they'll just close the net and destroy you. So I think that's the really big thing. I've been talking a lot as Seth. For audio listeners, it's not just to be clear, I do like to talk a lot, but that's why Seth's not getting words in. But now we can get your thoughts on. Am I off base with this big general tip, or what do you think?
So kind of like the strategy is, instead of not necessarily scoring, it's preventing your opponent from scoring.
You have to create a firefight. Yeah, I would say, yeah. If you're in a situation where you can't toilet bowl, you know, because even if you want to toilet, if you have the activations to toilet bowl, they can easily hit you quickly with like 3 bikes and then get away before you maybe kill a bike and trade. So you have to create a sustained firefight. And the way to do that is be in the middle of the board and make it happen.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, like, try to take out like your opponent's bikes, because like if like, let's say if you're playing against like Blizzard Force, if you take out their bikes and you're playing a gunline, because gunline you probably have snipers and range and stuff, like you take out their bikes, your best foot is ahead of you, because now they have to do like all their things coming in.
Yeah, like, but you have to fully kill them. You have to fully kill them. You can't let them go away. That's the thing. Usually against Blizzard Force, you know, particularly as a good example, I like to kill one bike and then, whatever. I'll probably focus on killing one bike from a different unit, because they're kind of neutered once they get down to one bike. They're hitting a lot less hard. If you try that on breakthrough, it's not going to go well. They'll just have 3 single model bikes at the end of the game, jumping into the scoring range. Yeah. So then you're sad.
So taking out your opponent's ability to score is a big thing. And then also, I think what you talked about, toilet bowling. I hate toilet bowling. So like if you're playing a gun line, let's just say on battle lines, and you get stuck on battle lines, like a wide deployment or something, what I would do is like stay in the middle and like prevent that toilet bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
So that your opponent, no matter where they move, they have to engage you no matter what.
Exactly. So you go towards them and choke them off. But also, the great thing about that, if they're on the edge and you're in the middle, and this is what I did when I played Dark Troopers, and because I played a lot of Breakthrough into Blizzard with Dark Troopers, and all your chaff, you can just toilet bowl with them. You just send them, let's say my opponent's on my left and I'm in the middle. I can send my naked shores way off to the right, because there's nothing else over there. If they want to come that way, they have to come through my army. Versus they're already in the corner. They don't have the space to keep a unit out of danger if you keep closing in. So their chaff, their naked units, naked storms or snows or whatever, you can blow those up pretty quickly. So that's the other advantage. So to keep in mind. And that's why, because generally if you're forced into this objective, you have to keep the entire turn 0 thing in focus, in that you have some control. You probably have some amount of control over the rest of the battlefield.
Yeah.
Right? Over the condition and the deployment, because the blue player is going to have to use a lot of their turns to manipulate it such that it puts you in this bind.
Absolutely.
So with that, you don't want to get... I don't want to get disarray, probably. Because then
no.
I can't be in the middle. I have to put a unit in a far spot. They put a bike in the far spot. I'm going to lose my trooper because they can't get out of there quickly, but they'll get away with their bike because it just triple moves, joins the rest of the army, right? So I want to force battle. That was my trick when I got into this situation of like, shoot, I've got to play breakthrough because I don't want to play bombing run. Okay, I'll at least force battle lines, and now I can be in the middle. Or danger close, you can kind of do the same thing. Deploying the long panhandle, get in the middle there. So stuff like that, I'd say, is the big things to think about.
Yeah, Ruben agrees with you. So
good.
Yes,
good. He has weird list building choices on the personnel, but he knows his stuff when it comes to.
He's still learning the game. So now, do you ever think sometimes when I've done a gun line, I always have 2 units. Let's say I get stuck with it. I always have 2 units that I'm no matter what, I want these 2 units to score. Everyone else, they'll try to stop my other opponent, but I want to get at least these 2 units to score. For instance, if I'm running a clone gun line, sometimes you have a boil unit or a rocket unit, or I don't know, something like that, to where they can go. I can send them the score, and I'm not losing my efficiency in my gun line. I think that that's been some help for me. And so instead of having my whole army just doing that, have my whole army get in the middle, and then have 2 units go and score no matter what. So I think that's helpful. I think arcs are also a big help. A good thing if you're doing those gun lines specifically for clones, because you can move, shoot, and have an aim. I think that's very beneficial as well.
Yeah, they don't mind moving. Exactly. It comes back to that action efficiency question.
Yeah.
So they're fine units for it. Clones, they have that problem of they want a fire support, and fire support clearly takes away 2 moves from potential moves from that unit. And maybe they have a lot of phase 1s, which is low courage, and that's going to make it hard to cross the battlefield as well. So those arc lists kind of have other problems, but the arcs themselves are great at it. So yeah, I think if you kind of think about it hey, the 2 chaff units that I would generally have, tapping VAPs or grabbing my home boxes and running away, those can just be kind of the 2 units you send to the far side and say, okay, they're going to score no matter what happens. For sure. I think that's... I cannot hear you anymore. Oh, I thought that was an intentional mute. Oh, there we go.
There was an intentional mute. I thought I
good.
It. Well, that's all I have to talk about.
Yeah, that's all I've got for battle lines. I think that's or not battle lines, breakthrough.
Yes.
And we kind of touched on battle lines.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a transition into battle lines. It's, I'd say, the most basic deployment, because it can, it's just range 1 from your side, and you get your whole side of the board. So very easy to visualize, very easy to set up. One of my least played deployments, I think the general wisdom that has happened when it comes to table building, right, is that we realized pretty early in the game's life that we didn't want squared buildings. We didn't want buildings to be at perpendicular angles to the board. It creates a very flat kind of look, and it creates not as interesting angles for the game. So usually those buildings are kind of turned 45 degrees often. And that can, and kind of you imagine the major offensive it's kind of like, hey, on that line, they're going to be good LOS blockers. That's just kind of like the generally accepted wisdom, and it does create really nice boards. But then when you do get something like battle lines, now they become a lot more flankable, because if you have a square that's now a diamond, you can come from the left or from the right, depending on where you try to go, and there's nowhere to hide. So if you've got like a Jedi or a Boba Fett, someone who's a really high value target, battle lines worries me because it's quite possible I will not have very good hiding spots. Because it's so wide, my opponent can find that zone where they want to flank. Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
There is a lot of flanking that does happen in battle lines, and that's why I have it like in like my Yoda list, but I have some concerns, but there's a lot of mobility that I can get around with.
Yeah, it's not great
that.
for your own Yoda, but like you're wanting to flank anyways with those speeders.
Exactly.
You want space to breathe. It goes back to, we talked about breakthrough. You don't want to create a choke point. Just generally with a list, if you want space to breathe and maneuver, something like battle lines is going to give you a lot of that space, because you can really go side to side in a way that you can't with something like Long March. So mobile lists, great, because you can find those flanking angles, you can get on those sides. A very sturdy list that maybe wants to sit in the same spot, they're just going to get flanked and not be able to take advantage of it and not be able to force a chokehold. And those are the kind of lists I play, so that's why I don't play battle lines all that often. So I'd say if you're looking for a real shorthand when it comes to battle lines, it's, do I want to force a fight in one spot, or do I want to be versatile in changing and shifting where I'm attacking from throughout the game?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. There you go.
Yeah, that's really good. So, for sure.
And as we go, there's there's certainly different combos you'll see a lot more often. When it comes to, hey, if I'm taking battle lines, I'm probably also taking a few of these other ones. But we'll get more into that as we go. That's kind of all I've got for battle lines, unless you've got more thoughts there.
No, sorry, I had to step away, so I don't know what all you touched on. But I think, did you ever talk about like any specific objective? So like, for instance, battle lines, like with like sabotage and moisture evaporators. Yeah, it's like a wild. I think sometimes that actually may like help, like your battle lines. Battle lines may actually be more beneficial, or like battle lines like seeing R2 across the table. Like, you don't really want that because it's super wide, and R2 can sneak through and get like an extra victory point right there. Which is the objectives is a really good shout, because you as I said, you're range 4 from your opponents, which means if you're playing something like VAPS or Recover, those objectives are starting range 1 from your deployment zone, so they're starting basically like range 2 from one another, and that's pretty close. Those are not very safe objectives. If you want to walk out and grab your box or tap your VAP, you could get blowed up real quick. Easily. So that's and your opponent will be able to be right across from you. You think about something like advanced positions. There's a lot of the board where it's just range 1 up from the side, but you can put it way on your right side on advanced positions, and it's very far from your opponent. And you can kind of put your army in front, so it's your army's between the objective and the opponent, versus on battle lines, you can't do that. So it's, again, maybe something more for aggro lists where you want to be aggressive, because they're there for the taking. If you want to be cagey and defensive, it's going to be tough, because wherever you try to go, it's your opponent has an option to make it not the kind of game you want to play. They can make it more aggressive and really come at you. And VAPs in particular is really cool, because you can like do some very weird zoning on VAPs, where it's like, hey, you place your first VAP, then I place my next VAP, such that you have to place your second VAP beyond my second VAP. So I split your 2 VAPs. So we kind of go mine, yours, across the battlefield. Yeah. Which now it's like,
now I can isolate one of your VAPs and really attack it, but you can do the same to me. It creates very interesting VAPs games.
It does.
I do
it
like
does.
battle lines on VAPs as an exciting twist. VAPs is a great objective, honestly, on like battle lines, disarray, all of the chaotic objectives. If you want to have a really good VAPs game, those are the ones I would suggest it on, because it's a good time. They're not combos that turn up often, because often lists that want to play VAPs don't want to play battle lines.
Well, honestly, it's kind of a scary like objective, because it's like like a scary scenario, because like you just never know, like with line of sight blockers. Like I was thinking, like if you have a good placed line of sight blocker for battle lines, like that Jedi can like guard your VAPs no matter, like for you, like against your VAP or something, you know. So it's kind of scary, you know. Like I don't like to play it because it is scary. So
yeah. Generally, it's not until turn 3 when I can finish tapping, you know, with a normal, quote unquote, normal list, because you can't move and tap turn 1 without scout or anything like that. So then turn 2, you move, tap, and then turn 3, you can tap and move back. By turn 3, they can be all over you.
Exactly.
It's nerve-wracking.
It's
great,
it is.
which is awesome. It makes things interesting. And that's why people, oh man, I'm going too far off topic, because we'll definitely talk about VAPs. That's another one I'm very excited to talk about in the future. But people talk about VAPs assuming like, oh, it's always a tie, blah blah. It's so boring. You just sit there. It's unfair to, you know, the player who has to initiate. And it's like, those VAPs don't start tapped. They start untapped. It's not a given that you just, boom, all my VAPs are done. And I don't know if that's why part of why I love VAPs. I think there's a few reasons why I love VAPs that many people do not. But harassing your opponents while they try to tap the VAP is a strategy and an important part of VAPs.
It's a fun strategy. Like, hey, I dare you to come tap this. You know, like it's fun. But going back to battle lines, I think stuff like if you're in a gun line or something, like not a mobility, and you want to play bombing run and you have to play bombing run, I think battle lines is actually a good deployment for that, because there's less actions you have to take to get the bomb to the other opponent's side. So I think that's like, in that scenario, battle lines would actually be good when, you know, you don't have to do it. So I think closing that gap to where you have to move to be able to score, I think is very beneficial.
And if you want to kind of stretch the game out, I think an objective like intercept or key positions, you know, if you're somehow getting forced into battle lines and you don't want to be too close, intercept key positions, you can kind of say, hey, there's the center, and then maybe on my right, I have my objective, and on your right, you have your objective, and we'll just fight over the middle, because you don't want to split forces and like come after my home objective, you know, on my side and your own, and not for the middle, because then you'll just get picked apart. So, you know, those kind of objectives can create a scenario where, hey, we've got our safe objective, we'll fight over the middle, and we can kind of range control about that access and kind of make it more of a diagonal game.
Yeah. Which I've seen that, like I've personally played that a lot, making those diagonal games happen. I think naturally a Legion player kind of does that. Just make a diagonal game. If you're playing like a gun line with a bunch of range.
Exactly.
Stuff.
So like you're not screwed necessarily if you're playing battle lines with a gun line. But yeah, some objectives are going to be better than others for sure.
Absolutely. Now that's all I have to say about that.
Yes, that was a great reminder. Now we have the most interesting part of all, clear conditions. I'd say this is probably in like 95% of lists, probably, because it's literally a blank card.
Yeah,
and this is
it just takes another variable out of the equation. That's all it does.
Yeah, I think the times there are a few specific lists that I've come across over the many years I've been playing Legion, where there are 4 strong conditions for that slot, and in that situation, if you've got 4 conditions that favor you and none of them are clear, take clear out, because that's just an off ramp for your opponent of like, oh man, I really don't want to play rapid against this list. Oh, okay, I can just go to clear. So if it's not something to shy away from, but I think there's just a lot of lists where you don't have 4 conditions where you're like, ooh, I feel good about playing that one.
Yeah. So I think of like whenever I think about bringing conditions, I think of 2 scenarios. How does this affect me? And is it worse for my opponent more than it is for me? And that's where like, okay, do I bring clear out or do I bring clear in just to have that safety card in? Because 9 times out of 10, I don't think like your opponent will flip clear conditions. They're like, oh, clear, no. I'm okay with that. Just focus on the objective / deployment. Yeah. But if you take clear out and you're like, oh, there's all of these scenarios, like I think will affect my opponent more than I am, bring it. Yes, it's still going to affect you, but if it's worse for your opponent, I would say bring it.
I think that is going to be a repeated thing throughout this series, I would say, when we talk about conditions. Yeah. I think a lot of the time people look at conditions and say, oh, I like this benefit. Fortified positions and supply drop being the big ones. It's like, oh, I love perks or I love extra cover. But there's a lot of time where it's like, yeah, but your opponent loves perks or extra cover a lot more than you. So you don't necessarily want those. Clear is one of those ones where everyone will be okay with. Like it's not really ever a mistake to put clear in. But if you do identify, hey, I do have good leverage on 4 other ones, put it in, because then it forces annoying choices from your opponent. Because a lot of the time, conditions won't be banned. Like, they'll be banned a little bit, but they're the lowest priority. Objective and deployment are what people care about. If you can have strong conditions that are not clear conditions, because that is just not a strong condition, it's just a cop-out. If you can force tough choices in that slot, that is an advantage. Because now you've got 2 bans and they're trying to affect 3 different zones and they're not feeling good.
Yeah, so that's all I have to say about clear.
Yeah, it's more like intro to conditions.
Intro to conditions. Yeah. Which more I feel like that's this is the beginning game. This is the beginner game. So yeah,
we'll layer in the much more. Honestly, all the other ones are pretty interesting.
It is. We'll get more interesting as
we'll get there.
The series progress. Just wait till we talk about VAPs.
Yes, that will be. I can't wait. I guess what? There's 8. We're gonna have to do 8 of these. That'll be fun. That'll be good. But anything else? You're doing a good multitask. It's providential that you wore your dad hat today.
It is. Yeah. So sorry, my kids are they're awake, and my wife stayed up late last night, so I was like, "You sleep in. I think I can handle it."
There you go.
It's still
good
debating.
Legion player, good husband, good dad. What can't Seth do?
I'm trying here. So no, that's all I have to say about clear. I'm really excited for this series because I just love talking about objectives, and it's a big part of the game. So does my son. He loves talking about it too. So yeah,
it's a huge part. I don't want to, you can't win the game turn 0. You can't quite lose it, but you can give yourself a big uphill battle. So it is important, and if you make the wrong choices going into list building, then you're just going to make turn 0 harder for yourself. So a lot of it starts before turn 0.
Yeah, I do hear a lot of people be like, if they lost the game, they're like, yeah, I lost that game turn 0. Like, it's just...
you never truly lose it. Like, I don't like having that mindset of, I lost it, because that takes a lot of agency out of the other 6 turns, but you can, like... you can shift the odds substantially.
Yes, absolutely. For sure.
Beauty. Alrighty. Well, I guess check back in a couple weeks, everybody, for the next installment, as we will figure out what other sets of cards we want to look at.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Have a good one, and stay Gungan.
This has been the Bombad Generals.
Listening to Bombad Generals is not scientifically proven to make you a better Legion player. Side effects may include bad dice rolls, missed triggers, aim losses, bankruptcy, divorce, vomiting, and sudden death. Ask your doctor if Bombad Generals is right for you.